It was a huge gamble. Since 1922, Skidmore College had made its home in the beautifully historic buildings that populated downtown Saratoga Springs, New York. But it was now 1966, and the college had to grow. Up at the end of Broadway, the new chapter for Skidmore was about to begin. The sprawling Woodlawn estate would be its new home, and a few buildings had started to be built. But the first classroom building would not only change a department, but one could say the college itself. In the spring of 1966, a modest gray-haired woman with a large corsage turned over the first shovelful of dirt in the construction of the Filene Music Building. She may not have been tall, but her vision and love for Skidmore would loom large. Helen Filene Ladd, class of 22, was one of a kind. An enthusiastically passionate and energetic member of the Board of Trustees, she was always working for Skidmore. Skidmore was Helen's second home, and when her husband George couldn't find her, he knew that she was probably doing something for Skidmore. On one such occasion, Skidmore President Joseph Palamountain was returning to his office when he noticed the door was closed. He asked his secretary why. She replied, "You can't go in there. Helen Ladd's making fundraising calls." He smiled and nodded and said, "Well, who could say no to her?" She had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to help raise funding for the new campus. But for the first classroom building, Helen's vision was clear. It would be a building to honor her mother, Therese Filene, a champion of music education in Boston. Therese W. Filene was the wife of Lincoln Filene of Filene's department stores in Boston, as well as founder of the Boston Music School Settlement and a passionate benefactor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Her dedication to music and education were well known, so it seemed a perfect fit for Skidmore. Knowing how important this building would be and what it would say about the college's commitment to music education, Helen quietly funded its construction herself. When Helen saw something that needed to be done, she just quietly went ahead and did it. That was her style. From the moment she joined her class in 1918, Helen's love and dedication to Skidmore began. Her leadership and passion for the school were as infectious as her smile. That passion could be felt in everything she did. And after serving her class as president in both her junior and senior years, in 1922, Helen earned one of the first baccalaureate degrees handed out. She then married George E. Ladd, Jr. later that same summer. Skidmore and George and Helen would be devoted partners for over 60 years. But in 1922, Helen's lifelong love for Skidmore was just getting started. As a devoted alumna and trustee for over 40 years, she played major roles in fundraising campaigns, choosing presidents, and helping to guide her beloved college to be the best it could be. The Filene Music Building would be fulfilling two passions Therese Filene shared with her two daughters, Catherine and Helen: music education and bringing people together. Filene, as it would be lovingly called by students and faculty alike, brought together in one building both education and performance. See, on the old campus, some classrooms were in one building, some in another, and College Hall served as the performance space. Students spent more time walking than they did performing. For the first time in a centralized location, education, collaboration, and inspiration were coming together, and the result would be nothing short of magic. As an extra added touch, Helen saw to it that one of her mother's favorite tapestries hung in the lobby of Filene, where it hangs to this very day. Under Department Chair George Green, the program quickly expanded to include music theory, performance, and education. That required more full-time faculty. But it was in 1979, under new Department Chair Isabel Williams, that another page in Skidmore's history was about to be written. Across the country, cutbacks in national funding for the arts and shrinking enrollments were spreading unchecked. Something had to be done. So George and Helen Ladd invited Dr. Williams and Don Richards from the Development Office to their home in Wayne, Maine, to have a conversation and some coffee. They were about to get more of a jolt than just from the caffeine. George and Helen asked them to submit a grant proposal to the Filene Foundation that would address the music department's needs and increase its visibility. Something bold was called for. The result was the first merit scholarship at Skidmore College. The Filene Music Scholarship and the Visiting Artists Program would continue to bring such luminaries as opera divas Anna Moffo, Marilyn Horne, pianist Vladimir Ashkenazy, Gunther Schuller, and even the great Aaron Copland, to name but a few. The continued tradition of Skidmore's strong music program was writing a whole new chapter in the college's history, and with the partnership of the Ladd family and the Filene Foundation, the future was going to be brighter than anyone could have imagined. Very soon, the impact of the grant was felt in the department. In 1983, 1 year after the launch of the program, enrollment was up 14%, the third highest increase in the college. And since 1982, over 4,000 students have submitted audition tapes. Over 730 have been invited to compete, and only 123 scholarships have been awarded. It's also become sort of a tradition that competitors who have not won scholarships end up enrolling. With competitors coming from all over the country, as well as the world, the Filene Music Scholarships have literally brought the world to Skidmore. Bringing people together was one of Helen's gifts, as well as her greatest joy. From the very beginning, Helen was right there front and center to be every competitor's greatest cheerleader. Ever the hostess, she took time to meet with each finalist and welcome them to Skidmore. It was that personal connection that made this less of a competition and more like an afternoon's recital. Win or lose, Helen was there to applaud them all. One tradition that was begun in 1982 was having flowers on the stage for the winners' concert. Helen loved flowers. In her home, down at their summer camp, making sure every visitor to her home had flowers to greet them in their room. The concert was no different. Sadly, Helen died in late 1983, having seen only 2 of the concerts. But traditions are made to live on, and such is the case with the winners' concerts today. Flowers are always on stage. As the scholarships and programs have continued to grow, so has the support of the Ladd family and the Filene Foundation. And there is always a member of the Ladd family in the audience at each competition. Year after year have seen trustees Bob Ladd and his son Bill Ladd, class of '83, meeting and greeting each student and welcoming them to Skidmore. When it became clear that the music department needed a much larger and more accommodating venue for classrooms, recording studios, and performance spaces, the state-of-the-art Zankel Music Center opened in 2010. Its crown jewel would be a 700-seat, glass-walled concert hall named for one of Skidmore's greatest champions. The Helen Filene Ladd Concert Hall does what Helen herself did all her life: bring people together. And the Filene Scholarship has changed the life of every winner in ways that no one could foresee. Filene Hall continues to be a vital part of Skidmore. It educates and inspires all who pass through its doors, just as the Filene Scholarships continue to transform lives with its wonderful opportunity. And the legacy of Helen Filene Ladd, class of 22, and her dedication to her family and her beloved Skidmore lives on.